Good Sunday morning to you. What time is it? We're talking 5:10 a.m., March 2nd. Well, the dogs are starting to mill around a little bit, so I figured I'd change rooms because that tends to allow Debbie to sleep a little bit. What I wanted to talk today about is because you'll notice most everything I do is either in the shop, which is about a third to a quarter of what I put on here, and the other part is to sit here and talk. But it's informative. Try and keep it useful for something. Um, Hydraulic cymbals. Now, some of you are going to sit there and say, oh, man, not cymbals. Come on. You don't need cymbals. You need to get your hands on it. You need to know how it's, well, you're partly correct. But if you're going to ignore hydraulic cymbals in the modern era, you're an imbecile. On the other side, ooh, I know hydraulic cymbals. I can read those puppies all day long. I can. Yeah. Then let me tell you, if you don't know what you're adjusting and you don't have any idea of basic hydraulic functions, you're an imbecile. And there's a third element to this. Okay, we just discussed hands-on. Somebody thinks that's more important. Cymbals, that's more important to know what you're putting your hands on, and then you both miss something else in between because you both need to work together. And this is something that age groups can help each other a lot. I happen to be an anomaly, and that's what made me think about this morning. Maybe it's something the Lord said you're going to talk about today. I don't know. It popped into my head, or if you watch Stargate SG-1, it popped into my Fron. And the thought was that, well, I was 43, 44 years old, someplace in there, 2003, 2004. Actually, yeah, probably in that same time frame. Anderson Equipment. And I went in for an interview before, and the guy says, well, do you really think you can overhaul this engine? You know, we've got these, oh, what was it? Scania and Moxie trucks. Yeah, why? It's a diesel. It's not like the only difference is it's where it's made. It's a diesel. It's not that hard. You gotta know your valve depth. You have to know a lot of other things, you know, your piston height and all that. When you overhaul the thing, your sleeve protrusion and et cetera. Your valve seats have to be right. I mean, yeah. Can you adjust the overhead on one of those? I said, what do you mean can I adjust the overhead? I've adjusted numerous L10 and MLM and Cummins and N14s. I mean, I even did an ISX once. I said, yeah, I can overhaul that engine. Are you sure? You seem a little bit too confident. I said, what? You're talking too confident. And he looked at me and said, can you work for a younger boss? Ding, ding, ding. Yeah, the older guys know exactly what I'm talking about. The instant that comes up, there's a problem. And so I just said, well, the interview's over. So you know what I did? I looked at him. Oh, you don't like old people? Drop dead young. Have fun. And while I'm looking across the desk at him, I said, well, you know, that doesn't come up in conversation unless you already have a problem in the shop between the older and the younger. And I said, and I'm not going to get involved in that. I said, older people have more experience. Younger people think they're smarter. I said, you know, if there's an age differential problem, it's already created. What I think doesn't matter. I did look at him and say, I have worked for younger bosses. So I'm not sure what you're asking here. I said, quite often companies hire younger people to put them in management positions when they shouldn't. As I knew the interview was over instantly. He was prejudiced against older workers because he got into a shop with older workers and didn't know how to talk to them. He talked down to them. He didn't talk to them or with them. So it was a major problem. He ended up being fired a while later, and what he was fired for was the older guys were being told to do shoddy work that he knew would work. And he was charging rebuilder prices for work that was done in the shop that was not rebuilder quality. So there's a lot of things that went on with that. But to play the generational game, well, some of you are here. Now, I'm not going to go through all of the list here. I'm going to continue my talk. because a year later, one of the people that young boss had a problem with was leaving the company, going to California, because his kids could go to college for free. Well, they found out that it's not free going to California to go to college because your taxes and cost of living and everything went through the roof. So you're paying for it one way or the other. As an example for you young kids out there, it's been known in New York State for 50 years that the highest cost per student in the SUNY system of New York is higher than any other college in the nation, including private colleges like RIT. That's been known. I said, wait a minute, but my tuition, your tuition's cheaper because the people of New York have paid up front. The actual cost per student is astronomical. California was similar. So what's the point? Well, my point is that I was graduated top in my class at SUNY Cobleskill, and one of the things I was top in was reading and putting together hydraulic and electrical diagrams. When I came into the test at Anderson Equipment, where the young'un was, the young'un got fired for his young attitudes, thinking he could skate around on people. And the other thing he got fired for was he was following instructions from some older managers. So there was a conflict all over the place, and he didn't have the stones to take care of it either way. But when I got into the test, after he was fired and another guy came in and he called me, and I came in to take the test, their aptitude test. Now, mind you, nobody in rental, nobody in sales, nobody in parts. I guess parts had a small aptitude test. Can you use a computer kind of thing? Ours was massive. I mean, we're talking pages. I went through it and I got back to him, and some of the stuff I looked at him said, they said, how did it go? And I said, well, I don't mean to sound arrogant here, but I said, who's the moron that came up with this thing anyway? And they said, what do you mean? I said, there's some stuff on here that the questions aren't answered properly. There's some stuff on here that are old questions from the 1960s that we had when I was in Cobleskill College, an ag college that's in here in an industrial test. This is kind of interesting. Well, when I get done, I nailed the hydraulic symbol end of it, and the guy who thought he was king in the company was all of a sudden chafed and said, well, I guess you beat me. I don't mean by a little, I mean a lot. So my point here is that I want to get to it to make this relatively short, especially with my dog barking his head off, is the younger can know the symbols. The older guys knows how the thing is put together, and if you guys read the book and locate the equipment that you're working on, knowing where your adjustment screws are, knowing where the actual servos and other things are in the hydraulic system, how the hoses are routed, where the stupid little lock-off valves and hold valves are, and pilot checks and everything that are in the systems outside of the main valve body, but also locate what's in the main valve body. Because you can have a relief valve here operating on something way down here. Then you have to know where each of them is, which pump comes into what. And that's when it comes down to, the symbols. That's great. You know where it's located and know what to do with it. But in between, the two of you need to come together and work on that one special little thing is where's the location and how do you adjust it? Because one of the greatest things on the planet that can happen out in the field, and I speak from experience on this one, is putting the young'un in the seat and then coming out and making the adjustments, the young'un seeing the different on his monitor. And when we're done, showing the young'un where I made the adjustment. So he's playing on the computer and I'm playing on the machine and we're working together. That's critical. See you later.